everybody. So we are out on the floor, and I am with Byron from Artis Opus, and we are going to talk about brushes, and he's going to show us something super cool. So tell us a little bit about what's going on here.
Okay, so we've got our range of dry brushes, which are on Kickstarter in 2 weeks' time. We've gone back, we've completely reinvented dry brushing as it's known. We've questioned the shape, the material, the length of bristles, how densely they're packed, and what we've come up with is the product that I'm about to show you, and that is a round, soft bristle dry brush, and the technique we're using involves moisture instead of dried out paint. It's quite different, but it's pretty special, and it will probably give you a result more akin to sharp edge highlighting and airbrushing than like chalky dry brushing, so to speak.
Well, show us what we're going to do. They do look totally different. For starters, Todd, if you want to kind of get in there and show everybody a little bit of what we're looking at.
This is what we're looking at. This is super soft hair. It's densely packed, and basically everything about this brush is to promote paint leaving it more readily, faster, easier with softer application. You're not scrubbing at your models. You're not abusing them and the technique. And what you can expect then, probably I'll show you here, is a much smoother application. So every single bit of that is done with a dry brush.
Wow.
That edge highlighting, dry brush, that smooth transition, dry brush, and that's from black primer straight up in about 3 minutes. And I'm going to do my best to show you that now.
Let's see it.
Let's go. So the first stage is pretty much your base coat. A lot of people aren't aware of this, but if you put dry brushing straight over a primer, you can put other paint straight over a primer, but dry brushing works better on top of other dry brushing. It wants to be on top of matte paints, and it wants to be on top of texture. So that's how I'm going to be beginning. And this is probably more akin to traditional dry brushing, so to speak. So it's a fairly heavy application, and I'm going to be stippling a bit as well. Over here, we've got some lights, so I'm going to try and echo those as a light source, as can be seen on this one. This is our moistening pad, so this is completely unheard of. If anyone airbrushes, they might know about putting thinner in their airbrush first and then putting the paint in, and that allows the paint to kind of slip out of the brush more readily. Exactly the same concept as that. We want our paint to be leaving really easily with no resistance, and we want to be using our techniques gently on the model. We're not aggressively physically pushing at them. So I'm going to do my best not to lick my brush. That's why I have the palette, but if I do, you'll have to forgive me.
That's all right.
Okay, so we're coming. It's quite a heavy one. That's why I've not removed the paint. I'm still coming in from the top right though, kind of 45-degree direction. Largely speaking, I'll be doing some stippling just to get this base coat down. It's both your primer and your base coat at this stage, and it is really, really important. Anyone who has started off their first stage of dry brushing and they end up removing the paint from the corners of the models, there we go, too late, did it already. That's very possibly down to this. Even really solid primers, Chaos Black from Games Workshop being very common, you're still going to have that issue. And that's because it's more like painting on top of to exaggerate, painting on top of a gloss rather than painting on top of a matte. It just doesn't want to be there as much. So that's exactly what we're trying to avoid. Okay, so we're working quite fast here. You see me using my thumb as my palette. It's because it's close by and it's got texture, so I'm basically looking, see the creases on my thumb there? That's the effect we're looking for. We want it to leave the gaps and pick out the raised areas. So that is it's quite a dark grey. We're using Esching Grey here from Games Workshop. It's given us a solid foundation. The next stage is where it starts getting a little bit more special. I'm a really big fan of not going to white until you need to. So I'm going to be using Ivory here from Vallejo, which is a fantastic way to kind of knock up to a higher grade of highlight without stepping directly into white. White's associated with chalkiness. That doesn't have to be a thing, but especially within dry brushing, it has that association. So I'm going back to the wet palette here. That's going to help the paint leave my brush more readily. And we'll get in here, and now we have to start paying attention to the angle that we're going in from here. And we're dry brushing really gently, so kind of eyeballing the angle that we're coming from. And we're going to gently build this up. It takes a little bit of patience, but in terms of dry brushing patience, but in terms of painting this amount of area to this quality, what you get in the time you give is pretty special, really. So it looks like I'm doing the same thing again and again, because I am. There's nothing else I can say. But we're kind of gradually building that up. Back to the wet palette. So going back to the wet palette then, rather than to the paint, this means that I'm rather than going back for more pigment to saturate the brush, I'm going back with more moisture to help leave the brush more readily. That's really important. So at this stage, I'm doing the cleaning of my brush at the same time as I'm doing the painting of my brush. That's got a few benefits. One, your brushes will last longer. Two, when it comes to adding the next colors, so if we go and get some more here, they're going onto a more naked bristle, which is only going to be a good thing as far as kind of purity of color goes and ease of use. You can see on my thumb there, they're not damp, but these moistened bristles that aren't dry, they're making it much easier to get the desired effect. I'm also, because I'm not worried about hard marks that you'd associate with other dry brushes, I'm quite happy to go in there and stipple, and that's going to kind of give us a global glow effect, which is what people would associate more with airbrushing.
Yes, and I'm so glad you said that, because the first thing I thought of when you showed me that one in the corner was that looks like an airbrushed effect. So it's fascinating. It's super fascinating.
Yeah, it's I think dry brushing has got a really ill-deserved rep over the years. And one of the most complimentary things we're hearing is like, no, you didn't dry brush that, but we did. We did. This is how it works. And that ability to go in with a variety of techniques with the same tool means that I'm getting my edges, I'm getting my my kind of like that glow effect that I mentioned before. You're getting that all the same way. So I'm not always going to go from this direction to simulate the light. I want to catch the edges of these. Go back, get some moisture, a bit more ivory. So there we go. I'm going to go against the grain as far as the direction I've been going. Because it's a soft brush, I can do this without worrying about it having an adverse effect on the rest of the model. So these tiny little lips here, I've got a big brush. I can pick those up pretty easily. These ones here. And then we're really starting to see it kind of take effect, particularly in this top right-hand corner where we've stippled and we've worked in that glow. Got that. So now at the stage where I'm going to jump to a slightly smaller brush. It's a completely clean brush, so the white that I'm using with it is going to be pure, and that's where we get our punchy final highlights. This is Games Workshop white. Any white would do at this stage. People have been asking us whether we're using dry paints. We've been using layer paints for all of this, base paints. You can use metallics, it really doesn't matter. And in fact, given the way that we use this technique, having finer pigments, which are not normally associated with base paints, because they're associated with coverage, that you would get in layer paints, it's absolutely fine. So, gently, gently. There you go, it's nice, isn't it? So, get a bit more moisture there. We'll go back to the paint once more after this. You can't see too much what this is doing, but it's picking out those very, very edges. It's also kind of working, again, on that soft glowy area. A bit heavy there. The nice thing about this is, because it's a soft technique, if you do make a mistake, you can go in there and neaten it up quite easily. Pick out those bits at the top, get that step at the bottom, and then, like dry brushing in general, you can get little flicks of paint. Pick up any clean brush, give it a powder. There you go.
That is awesome. How cool. I seriously mind blown, because like I said, when I looked at that one in the corner, I was like, okay, because I could completely envision the airbrush effect doing that, and that was really kind of magical to watch.
Yeah, exactly. So airbrush, edge highlight, you've kind of got that effect going in there. If you wanted to exaggerate this now, all it would be is a matter of You get a dark color, a black, or if you want to introduce any other colors, streaking or brown or something, come in there, kind of push them in with a layer brush in there, and then you can get a really nice kind of beautiful exaggeration of exactly all that work you've done so far. But that's it.
Awesome. That is very cool. Thank you so much, Byron. That was really cool. You guys, what do you think? It kind of flips dry brushing on its head now, doesn't it? And so you said Kickstarter coming up then?
Yeah, so it's the 6th of April, 2 weekends time on the Saturday.
All right, guys, Artis Opus. If you have any particular questions, make sure you get them in the comments below. Comment because there's swag up for grabs. You do not want to miss out on that. And I will see you guys again in the next one.